Hey everyone, you're here with Mark Batwell at perfectgardens.com. So one of my clients just recently asked me a question of how to set up their clone room for max return on investment. And in this video, we're going to get into the setup, how to clone, and I'm going to be giving you tons of examples of what is the ideal time to transplant and what it looks like when you've waited too long. I'll also show you our own clone room in the mushroom farm that got raided and busted in 2012.
Are you tired of getting crappy advice from your local hydroponics store? Or having to search all over forums to get advice that only takes you in different directions than solving your immediate problem? Well, join our membership for $50 a month. You get direct access to me. We'll connect on WhatsApp app. And just like this gentleman that started back in July with us, as problems arise, we are here for you.
Okay, so my client has a shed in the back of his house, and he has a workshop up front. This is the main door right here that you walk in. So he walks in right here, and when you end up walking back, and right now this is the clone room, and this is actually extra storage. So what I ended up recommending to him to do is just clear this whole area out and make this your far back room. Some of the things he's going to end up needing to do is he's going to need an intake, because we're going to turn this entire back area, which is about 10 feet by 14 feet roughly, and about 8 feet to 10 feet tall. What I'm recommending for him to do is to just make this his entire clone space. He's going to want to bring air in from the outside, and he's going to want to be having air evacuate out of his grow room right here. So some things to take into consideration. I would actually probably reverse this. So I would have air come in right here in this corner, and then air go out on this corner right here. And I would probably not do it right there. The reason why is because when you have air come in and the air gets sucked out right here, you know that the air is actually traveling through your entire room right here. If you're bringing air in from right here and sucking it out on this side, this fan very well could be pulling the air in from right here and just kind of coming straight in right here. And so you might end up having a hot grow room on this side of the grow room, and then another small little microclimate that's colder right here. So by just switching around your airflow, you'll end up having a healthier growing environment. I would also recommend putting some type of a HEPA filter in of some level, or just something that's going to stop the big bugs from coming into your grow room. On this side, I would recommend having a duct. I would recommend getting something that has a flap, so when the fan comes on, the flap opens, and then when the fan turns off, the flap closes. I would also put some type of a larger micron screen so bugs don't come back into your grow room right here. This micron screen is going to be smaller. This one can be a little bit larger. Try to also get fans that have the same air input. This is going to have a little bit more drag because of the filter that you're using. So this fan might be a little bit stronger, and then this one would be, once again, the same capacity as this fan minimum, or this one would be your smaller fan and this one would be your larger fan. Next, what I'm recommending for this gentleman to do is to have his work area right here, and then to set up his shell for his clones right here. Set up his grow light right here. He's going to be using induction lights, which are about 3 feet long, and they don't use as much power as a 1000-watt HID. I believe they're about 500 watts, because he does have power that is limited back here. I believe he has about 20 amps to utilize. So we have to make sure to take into consideration power usage, because you don't want breakers to be popping and then your plants start getting shocked because the lights are off when they should be on because you're using too much power. These lights also have the ability to use less wattage. They have a little switch, which are really interesting. So I know with him using these induction lights and veg plants not needing a large amount of light, he's going to be able to work around his power consumption capacity while growing the maximum amount of mother plants underneath these lights, so he can continue to keep cloning and stay in continuous production. So obviously he'll be cloning off of these plants, working at his work table, and then be putting them underneath the shelves with T5 light under domes so they can start the cloning process. Also, when you bring the air in from right here, what's going to end up happening is these lights are going to slowly heat up the air, and by the time it gets sucked out on this side, these clones will be in a slightly warmer environment than if the clones were on this side or right here. So I think in this situation, this would be the ideal spot for clones, because these clones will be in a slightly warmer area, which will make a difference. Over the years, I have found the ideal ambient air temperature to be roughly about 76 degrees, okay? Over the years, I have dramatically, actually, let me be very clear, I've noticed a dramatic difference in these plants if they start to get above 78 degrees or get colder than 74 degrees. So I've really found that sweet spot to be 76 degrees ambient air temperature. If you can do that and hold your ambient air temperature during the day, and obviously when the lights turn off, the temperature will be a little bit colder. One additional thing I actually might recommend is to hang panda paper right here. So it doesn't have to be super heavy. Panda paper is just a heavy, thick plastic that I would probably recommend he hang to the top of the ceiling and over, because the ideal light cycle for clones is 24 straight hours. Although for the mother plants, it's going to be 16 to 18 hours on and 6 or 8 hours off, depending upon, once again, those 2 hours with the lights off. It could be because you want to save money, but the plants need at least 16 hours of light to stay in vegetative growth. The reason why, in the past video, I talked specifically about why clones should have 24 straight hours. If you haven't checked out that video, it's called The 3 Secrets to Cloning with Aeroponic Cloner. In short, when the plants collect light, they store their energy in the root system. Obviously, when you take a clone, it has no root system, so there's no battery to store the energy. So that's why I always recommend to have a 24-hour light cycle for your clones and to have a 18 hours on, 6 hours off for your mother plant. Once again, these would be 24 hours because when the plant is collecting the light, it's sending a signal to its root system to store energy. And because there's no root, the plant is going to constantly sending out that signal, roots, roots, roots. I need to store energy in the roots. I need to store energy in the roots. And obviously, because there's no root, the plant's going to focus in on producing roots in that 24 hours. I know a lot of you guys might be thinking, wow, that sounds like a great idea. Why don't I just have my plants have 24 hours of light down here? And you can if you want, although we're also talking about indoor growing and the cost of production, as well as, in my viewpoint, everything needs time to rest. Nothing can go for 24 straight hours. That's just not really how things are designed. Even in Alaska, when they have 24 straight hours in the summertime, it's not really 24 straight hours. It does get semi-dark for a couple hours and then the sun comes back out. So now I bet you're guessing, how many clones can you get from an area like this? Well, let's go ahead and get into that. I would say you could very easily put 24 mother plants underneath these lights. So you'd be putting 8 across and 3 deep. From here, every single time you clone, you'll probably be able to get 2, maximum 3 clones off each of these plants. So every single time you clone off of these plants, you should be able to get roughly between 65 and 75 clones to put up here on the shelf. Then you would give these plants probably another 2 weeks of vegetative growth, clone off them again. At that period, you once again are probably going to be able to get 2 to 4 clones off these plants, because once again, when you get your clones, you're kind of also topping, so you're going to have more foliage. And the maximum you ever want to top is twice on a plant. If you do that too much or clone too much, there's too many flower sites, and normally in indoor growing, there's not enough light for all those flower sites to produce. So right when you get the second batch of clones, you'll most likely be able to get roughly about 60 to maybe up to 80 clones a second batch. At this point, you would take all these preteens and you would throw them outside. Because this gentleman is living in California, he's capable of flowering for 10 months out of the year. Because he lives in such a unique Mediterranean climate, he relatively has the ideal growing environment year round to grow outdoors. Obviously, when rain comes in and a couple other things, he's going to have to put plastic over the grow for the outdoor plant and do a few things to manage the plant's health. But this gentleman right here can flower out 24 plants roughly every 5 to 6 weeks, most likely, because there's going to be 2 to 3 weeks of vegetative growth. Then there will be the first cutting, right, for clones. Then there will be another 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks of them growing, and then another cloning, and then he throws them outside. So from that point forward, he's going to take 24 clones from his production, put them back in here. He will now have roughly 40 clones he can sell to the open market, and he has an additional roughly 60 to 100 clones that will be coming off in about 2 weeks behind those, which he can also sell to the open market. When that second batch of clones gets sold to the open market, these that have been vegging for roughly 3 weeks, while the second batch are getting roots, are roughly about the perfect size to be cloned off of again. And then once again, you're repeating this entire cycle. So when you look at this for the entire year, he'll be flowering out 24 plants, roughly 4.5 to 5 times a year. These 24 plants will probably produce at least 2 pounds of product, maybe even more. And he's capable of selling roughly about 120 clones 4.5 to 5 times a year as well. This entire little business right here is capable with, let's say, 2 pounds, let's say 10 pounds annually sold at, let's say, $1,400 wholesale, produces an extra $14,000. And let's say you sell these clones for $3 to $6 a piece. You produce 600 clones. That's an extra $3,600 per year annually. And this little workshop in the back now is roughly bringing in an extra $20,000 to $21,000 annually a year. That's more than if you worked at McDonald's full time the entire year. Take that into consideration. I always love talking about the importance of getting into home manufacturing. It doesn't matter if you're growing plants, if you're cooking food and selling tamales on the streets. It doesn't matter. Over the last 50 years, we have gotten too reliant on being able to order products from China and get them shipped here to the U.S. We have to become creative and self-efficient. I don't want to get too much into politics, but as you can see overall, this gentleman right here, when he approaches it like this, he should be able to get a pretty decent business going where he'll be able to produce enough and sell enough to feed his family. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the cloning of how to clone. First thing, when you come over here to perfectgardens.com, all you do is go over to Gardening Essentials, come down to Propagation. Whether you're getting the products here or you're going down to your local hydroponics store, you're going to be looking for things like root riots or oasis plugs or even hydroton plugs or just cloning soil. Good starter soil. Next thing I would recommend you're wanting to get is a product called Drops of Balance. Water is absolutely everything. So these were clones that we cloned in water using Drops of Balance. And I'm going to pull these clones out because we're actually cloning with clones that didn't have Drops of Balance. I'm going to show you the comparison difference. First, what I want to really point out is you see the little fibrous hairs. This is all the hyphae. This is the communication that the root needs. So this is the root, but the hyphae is the communication, right? And these clones were cloned in water just using Drops of Balance. That's it. Just for Drops of Balance. Now I'm going to pull up this other picture where I did a comparison. So this, as you can see, is purple. This was with Clonex. And this one right here was with Drops of Balance. Obviously, you can tell that sometimes you get great clones with Clonex, sometimes you don't. Anyone that uses cloning gel knows what I'm talking about. I still use cloning gel, but I always treat my water first with Drops of Balance. And when I do that, I've noticed that the hyphae starts earlier with my clones. So that's the first secret, is to treat your water. Don't just get RO water. Don't just use tap water. All those things have man-made chemicals that void your water of bioavailability. When you use Drops Balance, it adds trace minerals in your water. It also cleans the water from all man-made chemicals, and it allows the best environment for microbiology to begin and the plants to start off nice and healthy. Okay, so you could check out Drops of Balance. They have a safety and testing. Great product, I recommend. Next, you're going to need some razor blades, your clone. You could get some cloning gel if you want, and then your Root Riots or Hydroton Oasis or just some soil. You're going to need your cloning tray, and I'd recommend you getting a 7-inch dome, ones without have holes so they can breathe. You do not want your air to become stagnated, and when they become stagnated, other problems begin to take hold like mold or powdery mildew. So while your clones are in this incubator, the atmosphere is also going to play a large part. And I'm going to show you a couple secrets of how to create a healthy atmosphere that was shown to me by my father a number of years ago, and it ended up working great in our mushroom farm for our production. Next, you're going to want to treat your clones. So first, you're going to treat your water with Drops Balance. I would also recommend a product called Azos by Extreme Gardening. It's a nitrogen fixing bacteria, and I would probably recommend a kelp extract because kelp extracts are great for amino acids. And if you ever get into other videos, I talk a lot about how the whole chain works, from fungi going and retrieving the minerals needing a coenzyme, and that coenzyme is produced by the bacteria that make the minerals available. So when you add in a little bit of kelp extract, a little bit of mycos and azos, you kind of have everything that the growing environment needs to start off in a microbiology direction. So you're going to treat your water, Drops of Balance, some azos, maybe a little bit of kelp extract. You're going to soak your plugs into here until they're nice and saturated. From there, you have everything set up to start taking clones off of your mother plant. Okay, so when you take clones off your mother plants, I wouldn't recommend using scissors. Scissors at times will create pressure and break the stem. I would actually recommend getting a razor blade, but this just gives a good example right here. Cut the stem at 45 degrees. The reason why you want to cut it at 45 degrees versus flat straight is because when you cut it flat, there is a vacuum being pulled upward. And if you can imagine that turgor pressure, which is the vacuum in a sense, turgor pressure, if I remember, is what it's called, that pressure pulling the water upward. If it's cut straight, the water, in a sense, as it sucks up, it's going to suck up an air embolism, very possibly, because if it's flat, you have this experience because it's pulling that bubble up. When you cut it at a 45, you cut that vacuum and it allows the water to actually get seeped in, versus when it's flat, because of how it works, you're kind of stopping water from flowing up more easily. So that 45 is the reason why. Hope that made sense. Next, you do not want to ever clone off of a plant that has already started flowering. So if the plant has went into a flowering cycle of 12 hours on and 12 hours off for longer than 24 hours, the plant has already started flowering. You do not want to clone a plant, once again, that's already started flowering. You also do not want to cut clones that are too short. You are just wasting your clone at that point. You're going to want to be getting clones that are nice, beautiful, 5 to 7 inches long, where you're capable of cutting off the lower extremity and you have just a nice, beautiful plant that's ready to start growing quickly. I would recommend you don't cut the leaves like this. I've done that in the past, and the reason why I did it was because I used to stuff my clones all together, and I realized that if we just gave them more room, we got more clones healthier, and with the plants being healthier through the entire production line from vegetative growth and then into flowering, we had less mold, less spider mites, less everything. So definitely getting a healthy 5 to 7 inch clone, giving them the space to breathe while they're under the 7-inch humidity dome, and avoiding unhealthy environments in this early stage really sets the plants up for success later down the road. Next, a lot of people will foliar spray their plants. They'll just take the dome off, they'll get a foliar spray, and they'll just go in there and spray all the clones. I do not recommend doing that. I actually recommend just taking the time when you're cloning your plants and watering them every day to not introduce excess humidity in the growing environment. And especially don't increase the humidity in the atmosphere, where it's going to give an ideal environment for powdery mildew to start to take hold on these leaves. As you can see right here, he's using a pipette to put the water into these plugs. You could do something like that, or what you could do is just flood the bottom of the tray with about a half inch of water and then just set these trays into the water and allow them to soak up from the bottom up and then remove them. Never foliar spraying water and just allowing the water to totally soak up into your trays without spraying or once again increasing humidity in your atmosphere. Next, I would recommend to not stuff your plants like this. Do you see how they just have them crammed in there? When you do that, you're going to miss things. Some plants will not take hold and they'll begin to die off and mold will start, and before you know it, that little plant ends up spreading mold to the plants around it. And then you take one out at some point, but all these plants now have an issue and you're going to be battling with this issue for the next few months. So I would recommend to give more than enough space under these humidity domes. I'm going to give you an example. Next, do not wait too long to transplant. This is wrong. Your plants are already getting root bound. A lot of people wait this long before transplanting. Not necessary. This is also waiting too long. The roots are beginning to get root bound and circle. This is also waiting too long. This right here is waiting too long. This is waiting too long. All of these examples I'm giving you, you have waited too long and have already started to create excess stress later down the road for these plants. This right here is still waiting a little too long. Right here, if you got to it at this point, it'd be okay, but still, I would transplant a little bit sooner. So right when you pick up the trays and you begin to see roots pop out, I am immediately pulling out all of the plants that have roots and I am transplanting them at this point. Right here, besides this being too short, this is right here the ideal time to transplant your plant. So right when they're coming out, they're going right into the soil and going outward versus starting to create a circling experience. Right here is a great example of giving your clones enough space while they're in the tray. I would recommend putting 1, 2, 3 max. Don't put 6. If you put 6, put only 3. This gentleman has a lot of short clones. I wouldn't do that, but he did do a great job at giving them enough space. Right here is the humidity dome. As you can see, all these particulates is because of excess humidity in the environment, creating a dew point on the dome. And so the dew point is created on the dome because it's warmer underneath the dome and it's colder on the outside environment. And by doing that, it creates a dew experience. And so you end up creating excess humidity in your environment. This is where a lot of growers develop their first initial problems while cloning. So obviously they created these domes with breathable hoods, and that works a little bit, but what we discovered, specifically what my father came up with a number of years ago, was spraying these domes with Windex. Windex is 5% ammonia. Ammonia is nitrogen for the plants, and so what the Windex is going to do is the Windex is not going to allow humidity to build up in the dome like this. And then when you spray the Windex in there, that Windex will breathe off ammonia and will be taken up by the stomas. And so once again, when I was talking about this, right, when you get a microbiology going, that stoma is also a part of your plant working properly. That's one secret, is using Windex, which is ammonia, to clean those humidity domes, which fixes the humidity issue and gives a light nitrogen for your plants. Because at the bottom, we weren't really giving fertilizer. We're giving a kelp, some minerals, and some bacteria, which helps the stomas work properly. Next, I'm using this as an example of how you can stack trays. So as you can see right here, they have 1 level, 2 levels, 3 levels, 4, and each underneath you have the light, which is producing heat for the plants above it. But where he's went wrong here is he put too many plants up here. You never want to do that, ever. Bug problems are going to start. I would actually personally never recommend using Dixie cups or cups like this. A lot of people do this. And I give you my word, this gentleman probably is making money, but he is also giving away his STDs to anyone that he sells his plants to. So let's go ahead and dive into our clone room for out the mushroom farm. And the mushroom farm is still up to date the largest indoor grow room that has ever been busted in California before the true legalization of cannabis. So as our family have the largest indoor grow room, when we got busted, the price of cannabis in our area went from $2,100 wholesale and it shot up to $2,900 wholesale. So that was the amount of inventory our operation and our subsidiary operations were producing year-round for 4 years. We're able to reduce the cost of the product close to $800, roughly 25%, for close to 4 years in Monterey County. And when we got busted, the price of the product increased dramatically. And that's also just being aware of how big our operation was. This picture was right when our operation was roughly getting started. When we were fully getting going, we had trays. We had 2 stacks of trays. So it was 1, 2, 3, and we had 4 over here when it was fully going. This right here is roughly about 1,000 clones. And if you zoom in, you can see how close they were. You have 1 tray, 2 trays, 3, 4, and 5 trays right here. And if you zoom, you see a little more. 1, 2, I think there's a third one, maybe fourth one. We never crammed our clones ever. And you can see all of these clones right here. They're beautifully 5 to 7 inches long, because we realized waiting for that one clone that was 2 inches or 3 inches to grow ended up holding up production. So we realized it's just best to make sure to have those long clones right from the get-go and to not be dealing with pest problems. So this was our cloning room right here. As you can see right here, this was where our AC came in, and this had a different growing environment than the veg plant. This back here was our drying room. We had our veg mother plants right here. All these plants would go into flowering, and so that was one side, and then this was the other side. So normally these were all right here. This is a dead spot because we were transferring these plants into the flowering room. But as you can see right here, all this entire room all the way back over here, plus this right here, supported this clone room. So this clone room produced all these veg plants for our flowering room. So this right here, there was 2 sides for one of our flowering rooms. So we had 73 lights per side. So every bay had 2 sides, and we had multiple flowering rooms. So we had 1, 2, and then the other flowering rooms. So as you can see, what I'm really trying to show you is that a tiny little veg area like this was capable of producing enough clones for rooms this size right here. Right here, this is my father. This is a really great friend right here, Pete, and myself. Pete is one of the largest cannabis growers in California and is a great friend of mine. I hope this video was helpful in kind of getting your mind around cloning production, the size and space each area needs, whether it was from clones, the veg mother plants, or even going into flowering. What I normally say is whatever size your flowering room is, you need about 25% of that space to be a veg room. So if you were growing in 10,000 square feet of space, you need 2,500 square feet of space for your veg plant. And then you need roughly 25% of the veg room space for your clone production. So you would need roughly around 750 to maybe 1,000 square feet of space for your clone area. If you hold those sizes as a standard initially as you're designing your grow room, and you developed healthy systems and processes and had a few employees, I guarantee you could become a major competitor in the cannabis market as of where the cannabis market is at right now, because there's not a lot of professionalism still up to today. Thank you so much. Please like, share, and subscribe. Have a great grow, everyone.